Welcome to the Positive Pen Podcast, where your stories and soul work matters. Now let's dive in. All right, let's do this one more time. The producer forgot to hit the button, go live. That is the number one cardinal rule you do not do. You have to hit the button to go live, or you'd be sitting there talking for 20 minutes and realize you're not on air. So I extremely apologize for anyone who was trying to get on and didn't see us. Anyways, my name is John Renaud. This is the Positive Pen Substack. We do a lot of the stories, soul work, and Substack or creative way of expressing ourselves and stuff like that. A couple of things I want to catch up on. Number one, we had a story today about Bella. It came out today. It talks about nobody knows us, and so fundraising hasn't been great on the financial side, but it's also been great on the connection side. So our networking has grown and starting to touch people and so forth like that. So we're excited about that. The second thing is that the Remy's Journeys books, if you've been following that, Remy is our support dog who is starting to kind of get into an area where it's the unknown of life. And some of the things that he's experiencing is a little bit challenging, I would say. And it's going to get harder for him as he's processing a lot of these things that life is throwing at him and his friends and so forth. So if you don't know Remy is a support dog, was adopted a couple years ago with his brothers. We have both dogs, but one is with his grandmother, and that's her support dog and taking care of her. But that's coming out Wednesday, so you're going to start seeing some developments on that, and hopefully I can close out the storyline sometime in August. That's where I'm thinking the story will end. And so you'll see that once a week coming out on Wednesdays. And then Friday, Thomas is scheduled to be on here. He's another person that I've asked through the promotional of Substack books to come online to talk about his books and so forth. If you're not familiar with the book funnel thing or the promotion that I'm trying to do, I've done 2 launches. One was April 2026. The other one was June 2026. They've been successful in its own way, but the problem is that I'm learning more and more about it, and I'm trying to change it up as I'm going, and that's why I only do 4 a year, because I want to make sure it gives true value to those authors. If you're not really understanding what an independent author goes, they're not pitching the stories to publishers and things like that. They're actually writing the book, put it online, and hopefully through their word of mouth and their friends and family, people will buy the book and turn around and support them that way. And unfortunately, it's a financial cost to them. There's a lot of money that a lot of money they put into it, their time, their sweat equity, all that. But also, like for me, I spent like $5,000 promoting one of my books or a couple of my books just to get going, and it didn't really yield a lot. So the reason why I came up with this program was to promote authors, indie authors that are on Substack who have a Substack platform. So you can go and check them out and get a feel for them and get a sense who they are, but also support them, either buying a book or even trying to write a review on them or spread it around. The more we can do that on Substack, eventually these big publishers, if we're constantly sharing our creative talent inside of Substack and promoting them and helping them grow, we can be the dominant publishing company and an organization. I don't want to say company, but basically something that's bigger than that they can ever offer. So please, if you could, on my Substack, you can go to the library, you see it, and you can click, and then it takes you to another website, and you can go through there. There's plenty of books on there that are Substack authors. Also, I've been doing Substack, just people who haven't written a book but have really great articles. I've been publishing them on there as well. The other thing is that what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, lost track. mine. So the idea, basically, the book library is a depository of all the people from Substack, so people can go there and check it out and buy books from there. And it's just an easier way to catalog things. And obviously, the book that's going to grow over time. The next book funnel or promotion, book promotion, will be in September. I'm starting to advertise for that, get people involved, and I'm getting a lot of interest, which I'm really excited about. So, with that said, I also want to bring in a Greg Sefa. I hope I said that right. Uh, he is someone that was the June or is the June promotional book for Substackers. And in his book, I am going to try to share it here if I can. I'll have it up while he's on. And so this is so he wrote The Real Life of Resurrection, and sorry for pronouncing incorrectly, but the idea behind it is I really wanted to talk to him about it, his story behind it, what got him to write something like that, and some of the challenges and so forth. So without further ado, hey sir, how you doing?
Hey, John.
Cool. So for the second time, did I make it right or did I botch your name?
That's okay. It's Sefa.
Sefa.
Long E. Yep.
Dang. Okay. Darn. I'm trying so hard to.
That's all right. That's all right.
It seems so simple, but it's. Is there a linear to like Europe or something like that, or where
It is
it?
actually Sifri from Spain. Actually, the original was Sifre.
So free.
Yeah.
Oh, what part of Spain?
Oh gosh. Tarbena was the village that my great grandfather was from.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly where it's at.
Gotcha. So, let's talk about your book. Where did the originality comes from that? Like, where did you start with that book? Like, I mean, obviously the Bible talks about it so much, about
right
the record, about those days. How did you what brought you to that conclusion to start writing a book about that, about life and things like that?
Yeah. It was kind of a two-part process. One was many years ago. I had done a sermon series on the resurrection encounters after Easter, where I had kind of put them through the lens of a first-person imagination, putting yourself in the story, and what's it like to experience this and wrestle with the doubts and the confusion and the uncertainties and all those sorts of just sort of human elements that often get glossed over.
Yeah.
But it was never really enough for a book. I kind of wanted it to be, but it never quite panned out. And then a couple of years ago, I started the process of merging two congregations together into one. And that was literally 3 months into one of those churches being their pastor. I've been at the other church for 4 years, and then added the second church and realized within 3 months that second church was going to close within a year. It wasn't going to work.
Okay.
And my other one was already struggling. That's why we added the second church. And so I had to ask them basically, what if you could keep all of your ministries and your community, if it just meant selling your building? And that's a pretty huge ask for a church, especially 3 months in. And I realized the kind of loss that they were facing. But I also saw seeds of new life and seeds of hope and possibility. And that was really the impetus behind this, was to say, look, there is new life possible, but it's going to require some sacrifice. And that's kind of the heart of what this book's about, really, is to say resurrection doesn't happen, new life doesn't happen in any area of our lives without losing something, without letting go, without releasing. You have to die before you can rise again, essentially. So that's the heart of it.
So, no, I completely understand. I was, we were in church this weekend and we were talking about the past, the present, and the future. And there was a lot of discussion about the Philippi the Paul's writings,
Hmm.
and we where he was trying to find joy
Yeah.
in some, like, he was obviously in prison, he was going to be killed for his teachings and things like that, but he had a strong, presence of understanding where, and I could be botching it, so you're the expert, so if I botch it, I apologize.
That's all right.
I'm just trying to go from memory recall, but in that sense, obviously the question was, do you need to find joy? But Paul was able to find joy in the most worst part of the world.
Hmm.
And as he was writing these letters, he was trying to encourage others that life doesn't begin in the past, it begins now.
Right.
And now, to create the future you want, you have to obviously, in this case, live through Jesus, like take in Jesus Christ, be more of that. But what he was talking, and I take it more of a modern approach, where if you're living that life, like, of the present, and even though, not to ignore your past, but to kind of live your past, like to live the present to move forward, that's really building your future, because now you're creating this image of living through someone's, a higher stake of eyes, like a higher, someone has set this, this image of being not perfect, but someone who is striving to be better each day. But in the same sense, the past will always be there, and there's nothing you can change about it. Is what you change is the present, and the future will come along with it. That's what I understand.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And and that plays a lot into the work I'm doing right now. I've been one of the processes that I used in the merger, and that I'm actually working on my fifth project about, is called pray dreaming. It's like daydreaming except through prayer. But it's an ancient Ignatian discernment practice, and really it goes to what you're talking about, bringing that past and future together, because sort of the way I image it in my workshops is that oftentimes when we look at the future, we look as if there's nothing behind us and that it just seems endless. It's out
Right.
there, it's unknown. We don't know how to grasp it. But instead, I kind of have these stepping stones across the lake with a bridge, and to say, what if our starting point is actually on the bridge? And then what happens is now you have a 360-degree view. Instead of just looking into the unknown, into the darkness, into the fog, you can kind of look back and see where you've been, all the things that you have built you to who you are along the way, all the gifts that you have that you can draw from to be able to move forward. And it gives you a new sense of awareness of possibilities that may not have otherwise been there, because you can
Right.
just get paralyzed by the unknown.
So, but that's where, when we were talking about that, uh, obviously the goal was talking about the presence. The presence is where the joy really becomes your presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, when we talk about the crucifixion and all that kind of stuff, one of the things that we do forget is that, we kind of get lost in that moment. I think those 3 days, we kind of get lost because we're confused. How can someone who's holy, who gets crucified, kind of dig into the story, we kind of like figure it out. But in reality, if we think about it, a lot of us go through that in
Mm-hmm.
so many ways. I mean, I've experienced that in my life. I experienced the pains of estrangements, wrong relationships, financial issues. You know, we all kind of go through, and then the shaming and all that kind of stuff, because that's where the past is always the shame. Like,
Right.
you feel shame, you're always put back in the past, and you always put yourself back there, and you can never get out of that rut, and you're always stuck there, and you're always like, ugh. But I think that's where your book comes in, is where we talk about, it's like you said, it's what happens if we start at the middle of that bridge, and say, if it's not back here, it's not there, maybe it's creating this new life that doesn't have to require a lot of that, the baggage that carries you all, across that bridge. Maybe you got to shed that, you have to let that go, shed it all off, to feel lighter so you could actually move across the bridge. If not, you're going to sink. Is that a that's is that something that
Yeah.
you're thinking about? Or
I think that's yeah, absolutely. The other piece I would add to it is that it's there is a lot that you have to shed and let go of, but there's also some continuity. And I think the old cliche of throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. Sometimes a lot of what I've been doing in my writing on Substack has been integrating a lot of those old pieces and kind of looking back to even the parts that I have shed and said, no, I'm not there anymore. I don't hold those beliefs anymore the same way. And yet there were things of value that shaped who I am, that became part of my core, that I drew from each of those stages of life. And so a lot of it is this process of integration, of figuring out, okay, what do I need to leave behind? And yet, how do I do that in a way that doesn't, give up my soul? Because all that stuff did have an impact on who I am now and where I'm going.
okay, so I'm going to tell a little bit of my story that I have not really shared a lot.
Sure.
Um, I was it was about 2019. You've been reading. We talked about a little about my book about earn not get.
Yes.
And I told you there's part 2, and you're like, really?
I know. I can't imagine it getting much worse.
It gets worse. I was involved with somebody, and we were engaged. And long story short, there's a lot of decisions made, and the choices that I thought were right were wrong. But not wrong in the sense of helping shed some of the burdens that I was carrying for 7 years or 8 years or how long it was. But it was more of the direction I was going in. It was the wrong direction because of the false pretenses of that I thought I was going. Because as most cases, you're chasing after materialistic things, or you're kind of like doing something along that line, and it's not really core driven value system. It's more like the materialistic stuff you're chasing it. And then what happened was 6 months later, we ended the relationship. I kind of ended up on the streets, kind of not full time, but I remember, lost, confused, shamed, hurt, angry. Oh, was I angry? I really just wanted to end it all and just kind of go away from it all. And I just want to distance myself from everybody. I thought, well, I'll do something. And I can remember sitting there and, I wasn't, I don't know how much of a believer most people are, but, I'm sitting there talking to a homeless person because I'm thinking to myself, this is my life. Kind of like thinking, this is my future now, right? And because what my present moment is it's not good. But that's not true. I was in a very depressed moment in life, and I was at rock bottom. It wasn't easy, but I remember the guy just basically said, let's smoke some crack or something like that, something crazy. I was like, what? No, I'm not. No. And then, but in that moment, I kind of heard a voice, internal discussions or something along that line. And all of a sudden they said, you have more to give. And I was like, then I immediately snapped out. I said, yeah, but I'm good. And I walked away, and I just went, I just took off. And, that's where I resonate with your book a lot, because that's really was the turning point of my life. Because after that, and I'm just going to, because after that, what happened was I found a place to stay. It was like $30 a night or something like that at a Airbnb. And I found an artist who's there, and I went to her and I said, I want to paint one day, right? And she's like, you want to paint? And because, she goes, have you ever painted before? And I was like, no, I never painted before. And then all of a sudden she goes, okay. And then within an hour I painted something. She goes, oh my God, like, you have talent. Like, don't ever give up on this. So we painted on, and I keep painting. And that was one. The other thing I discovered, I was traveling through London and through Europe a little bit there. I was like in Paris and a couple places because I just needed a place to go away. I learned about myself more, and then when I've in that process, I started writing about stuff, just my day-to-day activity, just writing about stuff, getting to learn more. And I learned that writing was helping to heal me along that process. The painting was helping me to ground me. My painting was giving me more focus. And through all that, I learn to love peace
Mm.
more than anything. And I think when I think about Jesus passing on and trying to come back to life after 3 days, it almost reminds me of the peace that he brings. The moment you remember, you know how everything kind of calms down when something tragic happens, and I don't mean this to be like negative. All of a sudden, there's some goodness that's happening,
Right.
and it's like, wow. And that's how I felt for about
Mm.
7 months. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so your book resonated to me, and something like that. That's where I was eager to have you on. But is that?
Yeah.
I mean, am I hitting like? Are we hitting the same stride here? I'm just trying to figure this. Like,
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. Wow. Yeah, and yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. That's one of the things I try to do in my writing, both in the book and on Substack, is I think too often in my church experience, because I grew up in a very fundamentalist, literal kind of background that I don't hold to anymore.
yeah,
And one of the big things, the issues there was always like, did it happen exactly this way? And I finally got to the point where I'm just like, who cares?
yeah,
Because the issue is translating it to real life. And so, exactly what you're talking about with your story that you just shared is, to me, why something like resurrection matters. So I don't want to, I want to be in that place where I'm like, I don't want to argue over the details of how it happened or whether it happened literally or all that kind of stuff. I but I also don't want to throw it out and dismiss it and say, oh well, yeah, that's just one of those mythical things in ancient history that we don't really believe in, that it's not scientific, because the reality is, as you said, you've experienced it. You've experienced that peace. You've experienced that something on the other side of those darkest moments, and that's something very real, and that's where the real life piece comes in for me,
mm.
and why I try to frame it that way, because I'm always trying to translate what all these stories mean for our human experience.
Yeah. That's the tough part when you try and like if you go to the Bible and you try to relate it to today's world. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and we had the eulogy and all that kind of stuff, and it was like, okay, you're just yapping at me. I don't mean negatively,
Yeah,
but you're sitting there going, okay, we do a bunch of rituals, and don't be wrong, I do like the Catholic Church. I prefer having Holy Communion every day or every Sunday. I have no
right.
problem with that. That was something that I was was part of my life, and but now I don't. I mean, I do. I miss it. I just miss the nostalgia of it. I don't miss the actual structure, and that's my own. I have my own reasons behind it, but
Yeah,
um, and now we go to a non-domination church, which obviously has more of a lecture. I wouldn't say educational, more
yeah,
right, more of an education. Not a lecture, but more education where I write down notes and things like that. And a lot of my ratings come from there too. Oddly
mm.
enough. Actually, the post that I post on Sunday regarding about the reason why I came to I think Substack, and I had a little bit of thing and I asked people about that. That's where that came from. Um, so but when you talk about the life of even with Jesus Christ, like his life wasn't perfect by no means, but he was with
Hmm.
people that were imperfectionists. He didn't
Right.
have a lot of things. You talk about Paul, and his end of life wasn't the greatest. It was torturous. I mean, to have the will, the both willpowers to do what they did was probably remarkable on its own merits. And I just kind of when I reflect on my life, I mean, there was a lot of, we kind of, I think there was a question that I was brought up what happens if hell and heaven was actually what we're living through right now?
Mm.
And, what does that look like? And, that's a hard question to ask, like, because you have a choice to live in heaven or to live in hell on
Hmm.
earth, your choice. And
Yeah.
so your choice to have people who influence you in a positive way, or you have people influence you in a negative way, and that's your choice. And that's what I think that's what God wants us to do is you have a choice to live your life the way you want it and
Hmm.
without judgment or whatever. But reality is on earth you are going to be judged, you are going to be shamed, you are going to be whatever choices you make, that's going to be affected to you. And is that something that you believe as well, or is that something?
Yeah, I think so. My one of my deepest convictions is that Jesus was a whole lot less about getting people into heaven as much as he was about getting heaven to earth. I mean, we pray it every Sunday, as you know, your kingdom come as on earth as it is on heaven. I mean,
Right.
that's the Lord's prayer. That's the fundamental. That's always been a core principle for me. And so, I was just writing a song last week, kind of a almost a spoof of a Southern gospel kind of thing. Almost an anti-Southern gospel, because the hook is, what if we're on our way to heaven and we pass Jesus on the road?
Oh my
That
gosh.
Jesus is coming down to us. Jesus is coming to show us how to be truly human, how to live in harmony with one another, how to live for human flourishing, for the well-being of all people, especially those who are the worst marginalized. And here we are so focused on just like, oh, make sure we believe the right things and get up to some place after we die.
Yeah.
And it's like we totally missed him. He's just, yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting concept. That's like, how did you like? What happens if you did miss them? That's a huge opportunity missed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I tied it back to the Good Samaritan story. Like, what if Jesus was the one beaten on the side of the road,
Oh
and
boy.
we're too quick to try to get. We just want to get
Yeah,
past because we've got heaven to get to. We've got better places. So
yeah.
and we missed the point.
So now, like, you're on Substack, and you're saying you're right about mostly day to day stuff. Like I write a lot of day to day,
Yeah.
like and most of them personal stuff that I write. I try,
Hmm.
or something I come across. In your writing, are you writing to find reason, or are you trying to find healing? What's the end goal, or are you just trying to pass the lesson along?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it, part of it is writing to process my own story and that integration that I talked about earlier, and trying to pull all the threads together. Because I've been on the fringe of so many different types of communities and groups and circles throughout my life, and always on the fringe and always walking that line in between where I never quite fit in anywhere.
Yeah,
But always, trying to bring them together. So writing is my way of bringing stuff together and processing that. And a lot of times when I start a piece, 9 times out of 10, it ends somewhere where I did not expect it to go. I wrote a poem one time, the words know the way,
yeah,
where they want to go. It's just like you like lighting the fire and it just takes off and goes where it wants to go.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's been a lot of my writing journey. But the other part of it that's been big for me, and I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. There's a piece about my father's legacy, and a piece about the stories of our lives. Because I know so little about my own heritage and about my father. My father died when I was 19. And I think about all the things that I wish I had known. And 2 years ago, I just turned the age that he was when he died.
Mm.
And that was really heavy for me, about that time. And that's not long before I started really writing in earnest, because I thought, you know what, I don't have the stories that I wish I had from them. I don't know what it meant for him to live out his faith. I don't know what it meant for him to be a father. I don't know any of the things that I wish that I had to internalize. And I thought, you know what, if nothing else, I don't know if my daughter will ever read any of this or not. I don't know if she'll ever be interested, but I at least want to know that if she hits, in her 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm gone, that she's got a place to find it, because that's what I wish I had.
I agree. That's why I write. I mean, that's why I write earn not given. And that's exactly why I write for my kids. I don't write for anybody else per se. That's why I don't get into I try not get into trash talk or things like that. I try to stay very positive and try to stay. Don't get me wrong, like I do have my own issues in the past. I do,
Right.
you know. But the idea is to leave them a legacy that they can, if they have the interest, they can search for me, and it's just as simple as to go and buy a book or whatever. And that's really that's that's my reasons. And that sounds like a lot like your reasons. And
Oh yeah.
I think that's a powerful thing for a child to know that, hey, dad is still there if I really want. And it was like interesting. I was watching some old movies and some of the actors that used to be there, and that I was like, they had lived a wonderful life in so many ways. I mean, some, I'm not wrong, not all of them, but majority of them did. They were acting, they were playing, and they were all this stuff, and they also had children that had children, whatever. And it'd be like, wow, I can go see Grandpa on a movie.
Mm.
I can
Oh
go
wow.
do this. Like I was just thinking in that way. I was like, isn't that a very powerful thing to think about? Like they left a legacy of visualization, their tone, their languages, all that stuff. And that's something, and that was a lot. So a lot of that came from the Child Bella project was we were searching our ancestries, and that's where the legacy came. And I was trying to figure it out, and there wasn't much recording of it. Not recording of the events. I knew
Right.
who the families were, but I didn't have the full stories. And I can see that being, for most fathers have that intention, because that has a lot of, because we, as fathers, I'm thinking of myself, we want to leave a legacy that we be proud of, not a
Hmm.
legacy of like, who is this person?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that's how I feel. Um, so it is. I mean, how old is your? I don't mean to. How old is
Oh
your
no,
daughter?
you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, she's 12.
She's 12. Okay,
Yeah.
mine are a young adult age. So,
Yeah, and both of her parents are pastors, so she doesn't stand a chance.
so how is it? So, like, your wife's a pastor, the same church
She
as
is. We have different churches. Yeah,
you?
about 30 minutes apart.
Oh, you do. Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
how you got
So
into
our
the?
daughter goes with whoever she's not mad at that day.
Is it usually with you or with the mom?
She usually goes with her mom because they've got a youth group at her church. So
Okay. You talked about merging churches in this book.
yes. Hmm.
Um, has has it declined? Like, one of the things I think we're missing in this world, I wouldn't say faith per se, but well, maybe it is faith. I don't know. I'm still thinking how I would word it. But say if this was more of the spiritual part of the life,
Hmm.
that I think society has forgotten about that part of the spiritual world. And if there's a quest for it, I don't think it's an institutionalized like a Catholic church. I think they're looking for that type of belonging in the community and feeling
Yes.
that sense of we're together and we help each other when we need to. And I think over the course of the years, we've kind of decentralized that, and we kind of just killed the nucleus family, killed all that.
Yep.
Like, we don't need all that. Everybody can be lived on their own. Um, and the children's kind of like wonky, just from my perspective. But it's just, um, do you think? You think that it's coming back, or is it still on its legs, or what's your read on things?
I I don't think it's ever going to come back in the institutional forms that we knew from, even in my childhood in the 80s and 90s, and let alone the, 50s and 60s that everybody seems to want to get back to. Um, that was when you look at church history, that was an aberrant time, that was very rare
Yeah,
across the board. And I don't know that it necessarily did us any favors in the long run, because it created this illusion where, um, this was just sort of the normal thing that you do because it's the social thing to do. It's the expectation, and we lost a lot of what it meant to really live out that faith, and build those communities, because we took them for granted for so long. We just assumed, oh well, of course we're going to have that community. It'll always be there because that's what you do on Sunday mornings. And I don't think that did us any favors, to be honest with you. I think we lost a lot of what it meant to actually be intentional about building those communities, about creating those safe space for people outside of our own little bubble.
yeah,
When we started becoming more transient, the families don't stay in the same place anymore. They can't.
yeah,
Um, so no, I don't think it's going to come back. And that doesn't really bother me. But I do think it's going to find new forms. I think it's already starting to find new forms. Some of those are digital forms.
yeah,
I pay attention to a podcast called Homebrewed Christianity. That's, I mean, well over 10,000. I mean, they're if they were a church, they'd be bigger than the biggest megachurch in the country. But they're scattered all over the world because it's a digital,
yeah.
community. So, I still think we need to find more embodied spaces, though, and I don't know what that's going to look like.
Right.
Because the digital world is great for connections, but there's still something missing that I don't think we've, as a society, realized quite. And I'm not sure that we're doing a very good job of you know nurturing physical spaces, nurturing the tension that comes with that to actually be physically together, to actually have communication with people that aren't just like us, that don't already fit our algorithmically filtered version of who we want to talk to.
Yeah, obviously in the Catholic Church, being raised in that world, you obviously quickly are very skeptical about stuff.
Right.
You're constantly questioning the world. And I don't mean that to be negative, it's just the way it was. But I remember going to Catholic, and we were schooled in a sense that if we didn't
Yep.
do certain things, we would be, belted, and that was that
Oh
was
yeah.
in the 70s or so. So that was kind of legal.
Yeah.
Heck, but even the schools had paddle boards at the time. So it's I think I don't really consider myself as a Christian person. I don't consider myself that. I consider myself more of a person that believes there is something more than just like I believe you need that spiritual person in your life
Yeah.
because you need something to measure yourself to. And it's not you have to be better than them or anything like that. I think there's a thing. But I also love the fact that if you had mind-like people similar to each other, that's where I believe you can grow a lot of good groups of friendships and common interest and things like that help nurture the community around it. Just similar like Substack. Substack is
Hmm.
very similar to that,
Right.
but also but on a physical level, it keeps you part of the community that maybe you because it's so easy not to be part of the community. You could just live in your home, sit on the
Hmm.
computer, or go on TV, or walk around the neighborhood, go to the local gym, or whatever you do, or the coffee shop. You might talk to George or Henry or Lisa, whoever they are, and and you don't know anything about them. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You don't know anything about them. And so you don't really have an interest. I just don't know how. I mean, you talk about the physical part of things. I think you're right. There's got to be something, but I think there's that. I think the holdup has always been, what I experienced as a kid. The
Mm.
fear of, oh my God. Even my kids, I was trying to go to Catholic church and all that.
Yep.
They're scarred by their mother because the mother had anti, you know, Christian stuff attitude, which,
Mm.
you know, hurt them long term than any gain. So, I mean, I really don't know where it would fit in today's world. If it doesn't involve technology, I don't know how it would fit.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more difficult. Although I see glimpses of it. Honestly, it's funny. My third book was about the wild goose. That's the image that I've got behind me.
Yeah.
It's the Holy Spirit image that they use in Ireland and in Celtic Christianity. And when I was in Ireland, I realized that because that's a lot of what the Celtic saints did was build those early communities, and they didn't intend to. A lot of them intended to go out and kind of isolate, like the monastic traditions. But
Wow.
these communities built around them. They just sought this out. They were hungry for it. And I thought about that when I was there, of like, where is that community now? And I saw it in Ireland in the pub culture. And I've got a chapter in my Wild Goose book actually about the pub culture being sort of the new church, as it were, because you go into a pub there and I mean it's like the old Cheers thing. It's everybody knows your name, nobody's a stranger, everybody buys everybody a round of drinks, you're singing together. There's this communal experience. Nobody's on their phone. Nobody brings a computer to the pub. I mean, that's just that would be taboo. You're there to be with your people. You have your local, and that's your space. And I couldn't help but wonder, like in that culture, did some of that carry over from that early, even though it's not Christian anymore.
Right.
I wonder if some of that need for that kind of community and belonging, like you talked about earlier, if that sort of carries forth, and has become enmeshed in that world.
Yeah, I do believe in community. I think you do need the connection because we are tribal in a sense. We have that tribal instincts, I think, is what I think, where we all had a community of some sort. Like I remember my neighborhood growing up, we lived in a very influential, not an influential, we had it was impoverished, but when I'm talking about influence, we're talking about cultures. We had people from all around the world, and you walk down the streets and you smell the food coming out of the kitchens, and you would smell India one day, you might smell
Mm.
Italian, you might smell German, and you could smell the food being cooked with family. And then the family, we would all go play outside. That was a community there that we all got together. We all knew each other's names. We all knew each other neighbors. And then we would come in and come to eat. And no one on the streets was left hungry. If
Mm.
like everybody was welcome to eat, everybody was welcome to join the dinner table and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't think that was taught, and everybody had a diverse background. Like no one was 100% this, 100% that. It was you had 3 or 4 different nationalities, if not more. And you know, it's an interesting thing because how you know somehow or another we've lost that sense
Yeah.
of purpose, because I always think that helps people,
Yeah, absolutely.
rather than discourage. Like I don't know where that came from, and I don't understand why we wanted to get away from that, because that was probably one of the best things human nature could ever have, was the ability to serve each other at a very local micro level, where everybody took care of each other regardless of their diverse backgrounds. And I think that's where, and I don't know if the churches I, back then, the churches were not really heavily involved, not that I remember. I mean, they were involved in some things, but not like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I explain it. It was like more or less of, here's Sunday school, here's church, you're done for the week.
Yep.
You know, out the door
Yeah.
you go. There was nothing extra other than Altar Boy, which was another story in itself. But you know, I don't know where that. I mean, that's something that was. I think we missed that, and I think that's where these social media platforms try to create that community. But even if you meet that person in real life, you're going to have differences right away. It's
Right.
it's not the same thing as the person next to you touching you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we need those differences. I mean, you're right. The church has not been great about this in modern history, at least. I don't know if there was a time they were or not. Like there's pockets where it's better and worse, but the kind of community you're describing, to me, that sounds like church. That's the beloved community that Jesus formed around him. And so I don't know that it's necessarily that we wanted to get away from it as much as the systems that are driven by pretty much just profit, they don't profit off of that. And so I mean, and you talk about it in your book, the corporate rat race, as it were, and how they define you and the expectations that are put on you just to be able to put food on the table.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're driven that hard for so many years, for so many decades at this point, there's just nothing left to give to that kind of a community.
No, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Corporate world sucked. It's not fun. I mean, I could tell you. I was thinking about it, and I was interviewing somebody. Her name is Sarah, and it was like last week, I think. I can't remember. And she was a journalist as well, and we were talking about newspapers, and I was in the newspaper business myself, and I was thinking about that. And I was actually writing about it. I was actually writing a rough draft. I usually how I start. So just in case everybody wants to know, is I get my phone, I'm driving, and I have all these thoughts, right? So I need to put it on somewhere. So I'll put it on my iPhone. I put notes in, and I just hit record, and I'm voice recording everything. And I was trying to think how I would start this, and it was the thought process is how do the when did newspapers really die? Because it's lost its community essence of how it used to be the oracle of the town. It used to be like, okay, that's the record of documents. We can read it on here. It was factual. It was vetted very well. And if there was an error, there was always a write up, an apology, and all that kind of stuff. This is what we found out, an update, things like that. And, when 9/11 happened, what it was happening during that period of time, newspapers learned very quickly how much of a dinosaur it really truly was. And every time you hit the press button, you're spending money right there. And if you don't have enough advertisers to cover your expenses, you're in the hole in the end of the day. And if you're printing 4 or 5 times a day just to keep up with the news because 24-hour news is beating you, there's no reason to give to the community because all you're doing is just regurgitating everything what the news people are saying. You're not putting anything out there that has any value.
Mm-hmm.
All you're trying to do is scream louder than what the TVs are doing.
Yeah.
And that's not community. That's not a
Mm-hmm.
community newspaper. That's not a community how you bring people together. And I remember in the boardroom, I was like freaking out. I was like, you're just diluting a newspaper. What do you want me to sell after you do all that?
Right. Yes.
You're like, what do you want me to do? You're taking the headlines and the hardest thing when you have like USA Today, Washington Post, New York Times, the Wall Street Journal all have similar headlines. What is your headline going to be any different than theirs?
Yep.
And it was like, and I wasn't the most favorite child in the boardroom, but I was like, my argument was, if we want to create something that was more community, why not write something and make sure we get everything down? We're not spending the money to put ourselves in the hole. Just like take a summary of it and try to make a catalog of what happened that day and that evening, and maybe try to put personal stories in there and try to get the right stories in there versus and trying to tell the story from a community level versus trying to be a national newspaper rather than doing all that. It's not helping. And I think that in my piece I was writing about it, like in my as I was my rough draft, I'm now just trying to tell you, like I'm kind of going through this myself right now. That's where I think we corporations, I think we miss the mark all the time when it comes to community, all the time. And it hurts. It hurts it hurts generations before us because they lose the sense of how to build a community and the purpose of a community. And it hurts us in a way that we like our legacy, like you say, talk about legacies and things like that. We don't have a legacy after this.
Right.
I mean, the last real true generation was Gen X. The most purest, honest, raw generation you could ever come across. And we've lost, and I don't say other generations have lost it in that sense. They just lost the sense of what it means to be a community.
Yeah, and I'm right at the tail end of Gen X, so I get that. And but I think what's coming up for me in all of that is that personal stories issue and the lack of them, because that's what I come across all the time. That's why I write what I do, because I still feel like there's a desperate need for those personal stories. There was a quote I came across. It was on the side of an Irish pub, and it was by I think it was James Joyce, that said, "In the particular is contained the universal," and that one has really resonated with me, because I think that where these personal stories come in is that's where the universal truths that we're all experiencing come in. That's where we find the resonance. When I'm on Substack, that's where there are some accounts, and all they do is the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and I actually wrote a couple of notes about this where I'm just like, at some point we're all just writing the exact same thing. You might just hit copy and paste them.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's the point?
No, we're not Twitter.
But it's when I get into those personal stories that I'm like, oh, that I can connect with, because I may not have any similar experience. I may not have any common ground with that story, but there's a human element underneath of it that I can resonate with. And that's what we need so much more of. That's what's missing. I go back through church libraries when I get to new churches, and it's like, you read old minutes from meetings, 50, 60, 100 years ago, and all you get is the same old, like, here's the financial statement, here's the buildings that were built. And I'm like, yeah, but who were the people? Why were you here? What were you doing? What was, like, tell me something about
what's the intention? What's the story? Yeah.
Tell me something that matters.
Yeah.
And that's just, there's so much of that that's not even in the history books, let alone in our modern writings. And so I get so fed up with that online, where it's like, I'm not trying to chase the headline. Every once in a while there'll be something that clicks that I'm like, okay, I've got to respond to that. But for the most part, I can't keep up with it, and I don't want to, because I'm trying to write things that are evergreen.
Yeah. No, you're right. Exactly. Yeah, evergreen is really important. Because at the end of the day, you can go on X or Twitter, you'll call it, and you can get into the political discussion of the 24 hours, and it's exhausting. It's one of those things you just kind of go there and you go like, what the hell is going on? And, sometimes I partake, but I don't partake here on Substack because that's my sanctuary.
Right.
You're not going to ruin my sanctuary. You're not going to take away my peace. You're not going to take away the years I built on this because of a political post. I don't want to do that. And people do. That's all they do, is they restack other people's posts and things like that. And, I do mute them, not the subscribers, but the content. I mute them because I just don't want it on my feed. I really don't want, I want no partakes in that. Not that I'm against it or for it. That's not what it is. And when I started, because when I started Positive Pen, the reason behind Positive Pen was I wanted that rawness. I
Mm.
wanted to share the evergreen stories. I wanted to share the personal heartaches and the pains and the desires and the loss, the tears, the laughters, the what joy brings in someone's life, because that's what we're missing. We're missing those personal stories. And if we go back to what we originally talked about, Jesus and the resurrection and all that kind of stuff, and Paul, those were personal stories, even
Hmm.
though they may be changed a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
But those were personal stories. You can't just sit there and say, but because they had a human element behind it. They had a little bit of they had humanity, like they had all the rawness that was someone is trying to live. And
Yes.
you can't live through news cycles.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I try to do in my writing. That's what I try to do in my ministry, to be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah.
even in preaching, that is trying to find that human connection with those characters of the ancient times.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've lost so much of that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So with so you're on Substack, you're writing personal stories. Some of it's probably yours, and some of it is you're trying to recreate some of the stories from the biblical um, stuff. What is the what kind of fun stuff that you write about that you kind of like giggle about it when you're done? Like, oh, this is cool. I actually wrote this.
I just wrote a post actually that is coming. I write ahead. I have to I have to schedule ahead because I never know when a week's going to come up where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I had 1 week where I had 3 funerals. I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm going to be. So if I'm not at least 4 or 5 weeks ahead on my
Yeah. Yeah.
scheduled stuff, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So I just wrote one that's coming out in, I guess, about 3 or 4 weeks on extraterrestrial life,
Okay.
which was completely out of the blue because like that's not a topic that I have. I enjoy a little bit of sci-fi here and there. I'm a big Star Trek fan and things like that, but I don't. It's not something that comes up in my world.
Yeah.
But it just started hitting me one time where I was just like, why are we so obsessed with it? I was noticing there was like a newfound obsession with it. Like everywhere I turned, people were talking about aliens and stuff. I'm like, what is going on here? So I just started writing about it, and it came out. It really still circled back around to the core of like, it's less about whether there's actually aliens and more about what our obsession with it says about us and our own longing for connection and our own longing for meaning. And so
Yeah.
even there, it was like it started out as this completely random thing, but it always comes back to that heart of our human experience.
So since you brought up Star Trek, so I always believe there is a Star Wars fan and there's always a Star Trek fan. Are
I
you
am both.
both? Really, both?
I am both, but I prefer Star Trek, but I feel like we as a society are choosing the Star Wars world vision of the future over the Star Trek vision.
Oh, okay, definitely. Okay. So I've never really watched Star Trek or Star Wars. I never got into it. Just like don't get me wrong, I got a glimpse of it, right? It's like even ET,
Oh
I never
yeah.
watched it. I never watched it. I never watched that. Like I couldn't get into it. I was like an alien with a finger. Like what's that?
Yeah.
So, but Star Trek was always on TV, so I always loved it because it was like more of like again more of a community. It was
Yeah.
more of like togetherness and trying to work things out and trying to figure it out rather than trying to fight every second.
Exactly.
It was always a base on solutions and resolutions and like you could always come back from whatever you're going.
Right.
Like we're going through the galaxies and we could always come back home, type thing. That was, yeah. So I'm a Star Trek guy.
Yeah, definitely. I think both of them definitely cast two very dramatically different visions for what the future will be like. And I think unfortunately we're choosing the constant war, the constant battle, the constant domination systems of the Star Wars world. And I've they've taken on new, like, some of the newer, they do better with their animated series. And even, like, I was watching rewatching with my daughter Rise of the Resistance recently, which is a little animated one that was done for kids. This stuff's not for kids. They say it's for kids. It's not just for kids. But man, the political commentary, it is sharp. It was like, you could take a couple episodes of that and put it up against the daily news reports, and it looked identical. And I'm like, this is not what we need. It was hitting a little too real.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I have my opinions about video games and all that kind of stuff. I think it deterred us a little bit. I think it took away some of our spirit. So Danny, I don't know if you saw the note that Danny put in.
Let's see. Yeah, Fear of Others.
Constant
Yes,
distraction.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said, Danny, about the more uncomfortable it feels too, because that's it. That's what the algorithms do, is they keep us in a very comfortable space.
Right.
And that's the intent, because it keeps our attention captive to that space that is comfortable and familiar to us. But we need friction. As humans, we need friction to grow. We need difference. We need to be challenged. We need to, be able to wrestle with difference and perspectives.
Yeah, but what if the friction is not conflict? What happens? Or it can be conflict. Let's like what if it's not violence? What happens?
Oh, hey, absolutely. Yeah, that's the best kind.
Like, why can't it be friction, like an athlete trying to make the Olympics?
Yeah, that's what it should be. Yeah, absolutely.
Where you are being challenged, you're not groomed, but challenged to be better. Sharpen the edges, trying to figure yourself out. Like, why? I mean, I think we missed the mark on so much. Like I said, I go back to the analogy. What if it was an Olympic person? What does that look like as a child?
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean browbeat them or something like that, but kind of like educate them and kind of get them in that direction where they're thriving to be the next best person they can ever be.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what we need. And I don't think we need, I don't know why it has become so violent, to be honest with you. It's just the escalation of the human condition. But I agree wholeheartedly that, and one of the things that I love about what you're doing with Positive Pen, and I see it in some athletic circles, and even in some talent circles, like the stuff that I really enjoy the most are the ones where they might be competing, but they're also like really cheering each other on, because they know, whether it's writers, whether it's entertainers, whether it's athletes, they know what it means to pour their blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and they don't need to tear each other down to be better.
I'll give you a story, and you can use it to, you'll appreciate this. So God sits at the finish line, and he says to a community of people, and they're all different. Some are athletes, some are not athletes, some are just pure, some are the old, some are the young. There's a lot of them out there. Whoever comes to the finish lines first can go to heaven. I'm being serious.
Wow.
So what happened was, this one guy says, he's very athletic. He bolts really, really fast to the finish line. And he says, I'm done. But then he turns around and he sees everybody helping each other, pushing them together, trying to raise the thing. And that's what God wanted. He wanted a community that lifts each other, not a community that destroy each other.
Mm.
And when the guy looked back, he was in shame because he didn't help anybody.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
Yeah. And that's part of the Positive Pen is to be an inspirational storyteller. to tell stories that could be tough in some situations, because I keep thinking about my children, and can these stories be told to a child and in a very positive way that can be like, death, what does that mean? Like, how does that work? How does that affect me? What's my emotions? Like, is there emotions? Do I be emotional? Like, should I just be laughing? Should I be happy? How do I conduct myself? Like,
Yeah.
a child doesn't understand that. They're kind of like sitting there, like they're processing all these things, and they're kind of like feeling what they're feeling. And then, sometimes they feel sad and they don't know to be sad, and it's okay to be sad. A lot of our or what does it feel like to write something, and how does it feel to write, because children aren't writing anymore. They're kind of like, yeah, we're on our tablet, we're doing whatever.
Mm.
Or how to be creative, what's the importance, but why creativity, what's the reason behind creativity, what did stimulates the brain and helps you heal in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Nobody understands that. Or what about reading a book that was written thousands of years ago that has a lot of the good stories that we are trying to say to today, but how do we take those words and make it modern so a child does understand that, which is
Hmm.
the quiet miracle that I was trying to do. How do we take the birth of Jesus, and how do we make that into a story that a kid can understand, that, oh, okay, now I understand what the scriptures mean because I can correlate with this book, because that's kind of things like that. It's more, I think that's where the Positive Pen was about, and it's a lot of what your writings are about, is to share those stories in a way that helps those that are seeking some type of beacon of light. And I always think of myself as a lighthouse, shedding that light
Yeah.
there and trying to call you home.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, and the other piece of that I really like is that one of the pieces of advice that I see all the time from the Substack gurus out there is about writing to solve a problem, or writing with a very clear, like, you got to know what the audience needs and what their problem is, and then write a fix for that. And I don't buy into that, because the truth is that not I or any other writer knows the fix for your problem. There
Right.
probably isn't even a fix. It's probably just something that you have to learn to process and live with. What I can do is I can write the stories, and I can model in my writing how I process those struggles in my own life. And hopefully that will then resonate in a way that others can say, yeah, okay, it may not connect directly with my problem, but it gives me permission to wrestle. It gives me
Yes.
permission to doubt. It gives me permission to question.
Mhm.
It gives me space, like you said, to be creative and to think outside the box. And
And enjoy
that is
yourself.
more valuable. Yeah, that's way more valuable than here's the answer, that's gonna get you whatever
So
goal you're wanting.
all those gurus, all those gurus, I don't think they understand. Like, well, I could say how they get other numbers up, but I'm not going to go there today. But they, I've been on here for over 4 years, I think, over 4 years. First as just an observer, then I started writing, and I was like, "This is stupid. Why am I writing to the internet?" Right? And that's I was nobody knows me, nobody cares. And as I was writing, I started to feel, you know, like I put it out there, and I said, "Okay, it is what it is. Let's just keep doing it and just keep going." And then I write personal, like I was writing inspirational stories about people I would encounter. Now I kind of do that now with the Friday Substack, where I write about the guests I bring on Monday,
Oh yeah.
because I always felt there was not a follow through or a follow up behind that story. And this way, the audience gets the written version, and they also get the live version, and or the auto record version of our conversation, and hopefully there's more of a connection. And so when I was doing all that, I started to learn that, you know, it's not about, like, the best stories that I wrote were the honest ones.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
wasn't about trying to be clever, trying to be a problem solver, trying to hit the, trying to trick the internet to thinking I'm this greatest thing there is in the world. It
Yep.
None of that. It had nothing to do with that. Like, I have a friend who barely came on to Substack, brought her on. I told her, just write from the heart. Don't try to make magic out of it. Just if you feel it, write it.
Yeah.
Boy, she wrote an article and she got over 1,000 likes and several million, like over maybe $100,000, 100,000 views,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
that was a small, and then she spiked because of it. But the problem was, again, she didn't write after that. She just kind of let it sit. And she also was kind of stagnant in her writing. And her true purpose was on there, was completely what she wrote. And I said, that's a disconnect, because now writers, you're being subscribed based on what people saw in that first
Mm.
article, and they're expecting the same thing over and over again, and you're trying to build a community that is separate from that. I mean,
Yeah.
there might be cross tablets of readers and audience, but your core thing that you want to talk about is not that. That's why when I created the Positive Pen, I was very intentional what I was writing. I was very intentional of maintaining, keeping this in the same lane, because I didn't want that to be bled over to other things and to be confused. And because of one of my readers to understand that if you come here, I'm going to be writing about stuff that is going to be gut wrenching sometimes, and sometimes it's going to be really fun, and there are going to be some conversations that you like and not like. You might subscribe, you may not subscribe, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's where I think when you get to that position and understanding what you're about writing, your community comes along with you. And that's the important part. So, I mean, when we talk about Star Treks and Star Wars, that's bonus to me. That's the bonus.
Right.
Talking about faith and talking about Jesus, that's the bonus part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about, these other things, that's the bonus part of it. But I don't get into the weeds of the noise, because that's not, because we're hungry for authentic, real purpose. We're hungry for
Exactly.
it, and we don't get
Exactly.
enough of it.
Yeah, I struggled with that early on. Well, really for probably the first half of my time on here with that whole niche thing and trying to narrow down
Yeah.
because I was running into that issue that your friend had, where people would read something and they'd really like it, and then the next article wouldn't be about the same thing, and I'm like, but I don't. I'm going to get bored if I write about the same thing every week for the next 30 years. That's not going to work. But the other thing that bugged me about that niche idea is, as human beings, we're not one dimensional.
Well, I'm not.
We're not just one thing.
I should.
Well,
I
no, but
rephrase.
well,
I'm not a niche person, like saying.
right.
Did you
Well, no,
cross?
I didn't mean that. But
Yeah.
where I was going with that is that what I started to find over time was kind of what you were saying is the common thread underneath.
Yeah.
Is it wasn't so much about the niche wasn't about a particular topic as much as I started to look at all the different topics I wrote about and see that there was that common thread of that human, like, what does it mean to be human? Was kind of a real heart piece of it. Right. So now I can be able to say, like, okay, you might read a piece about ministry in church. You might read a piece about my deconstruction journey. You might read a piece about a political issue, whatever, or about alien life. But at the end of the day, it's all going to come back to
a human.
What is it? Yeah, what is in us? What does it mean to live this human experience? And that's not a one-dimensional thing. So one thing that I found that helped was I actually created this page. If anybody is Substack writers out there and you don't know about pages, you can use this thing like a website.
Yeah.
And so I not only created a page for my books, but I also created a page that's explored by topic. And you can go in, and I just kind of narrowed down like 10 general topics or themes
Yeah.
that were showing up consistently in my writings, and then just started to auto categorize them so
Oh,
that if
wow.
people if people want that niche, they can go in and they're like, okay, well, I really like the spiritual formation stuff. But then you got into talking about the writing life, and I'm like, well, I'm not a writer. I don't care about that. Well, okay, go to the explore by topic and go to the spiritual formation tab, and you can find all the articles I've written about that.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's a really helpful tool if you're out there to be able to give people what they're looking for, but also hopefully stretch them a little bit to realize that we're all more than one thing.
Yeah. And I should always say that, her niche, she was actually complaining about AI and all that. And it was
Mm,
far from what she was writing about her journey and how that translated and all that kind of stuff, which was more of the human element of things, which is okay. And I understand why she wrote that because it was a very powerful piece, but she didn't really capitalize it in a sense of what it was. And not that she's not talented, she's a very talented individual and she should try to find something in there. But some of us don't find our voice for a while on here
yeah.
because we're like you spent time figuring things out. I took me a time to figure my voice out, but I think you're right about, well, I know you're right about the whole, so I treat my Substack like a newspaper.
Mm,
Like, so I have lifestyle, I have history, I kind of throw that in there, but the positive pen is the umbrella of all of that. And the concept is really that, I the idea is it's not like a media page, but more like a newspaper because I'm used to reading
yeah.
newspapers. That's how I do things in my head, and I think that's the best way to present it. So I do have links to my books or links to the library. I do have links to other things. I kind of create these links. I also categorize everything. So if you're in Child Bella, you get to see Child Bella. If you want to see Positive Pen, there's a Positive Pen section where it's the store or things like that. And I think that helps people categorize it. So but I also will do is I'll write. So Remy's journey, what I'll do is I'll put it on one of those things and categorize those niche. And then what I'll do is I'll let it go until I finish the story. And then what I'll do is I'll archive it per se or turn it dark so that when I am editing the book, no one's really reading it because I kind of finished the first draft. So I write all my books on Substack first. I kind of archive it so nobody sees it anymore, and then I kind of do the editing, and then that's when I publish my book.
Mm,
And then I
yeah.
bring that back on, and that's how I do it. And that's sort of it's just the way I've been doing it. So when you see the book or when you read it online, it's generally the same, but it's not. Like I've actually probably added more meat to the stories. I kind of changed things out. Like Earned Not Given, prime example. Chapter 1 was a total rewrite
Mm.
from scratch. When it originally went there, it was talking about me being a newspaper boy, and someone said to me, like, what does it have to do with price of rice in China? So what?
Nice.
You were a newspaper boy. I was like, oh, heartbroken. I was like, you know what? You're right. So the whole weekend I rewrote it, like like
Yeah.
day and night. I didn't stop. I just wrote it all out. So
Yeah. I love the newspaper analogy for a Substack in general. That's on all the different sections of it. That's beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So what's coming up for you? What's next on the horizon? I know you're working on another book, right? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
understanding?
it's a little bit bigger than a book actually. It's going to have a devotional book with it. But it's also I'm hoping to develop it into like a video study series that people can use like in their churches or with leadership teams or things like that. And it's about that discernment process that I talked about earlier about prayer
Yeah.
dreaming. And really looking at standing on that bridge and looking at what are the seeds that are already here. Because I think too often when we try to figure out, I don't know about you or others, but I've spent a lot of years in my life always asking the question, what's next? And that what's next has always been like it's so broad, it's so vague, it's paralyzing.
Right.
It is a paralyzing question, has been for me many times. And so starting to learn to say, what if what's next is already planted under the surface?
Mm.
What if the seeds are already there? And that's kind of how this prayer dreaming thing is coming up, because
Okay.
like, okay. And that's honestly, that's how real life resurrection came up, was because the seeds were already there in that sermon series that I'd done years ago.
Yeah.
But then it was lived out in real experience that it was like, okay, now it's got some flesh to it.
Right. Right.
And then the prayer dreaming was a process that I was introduced to right about the time I started that merger, and I used it in my personal life.
Mhm.
So I'm getting ready to do a workshop with my church, actually starting on Wednesday. And basically I'm telling them, like, look, you all have already been through this process. You just don't know it, because this was my internal soul work process
Yeah.
of how I was able to accomplish this.
Right.
And you didn't know what was going on underneath. And so now we're going to do it together and allow you to apply this in your own life and
Mhm.
your own difficult decisions and transitions and whatever unknowns you're facing, to see what's already sprouting under the surface, and how can I nurture that.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
That's
that's where I'm going next.
so. I see you play the guitar. I see
I
that.
do.
Okay.
I do. Yep.
And how long you been playing that?
I started in college. I was at the University of Florida, and I lived in a third floor dorm with no elevator and sprained my ankle freshman year. And my roommate had an old beat up classical guitar there, and I got bored, so I'm just started figuring it out. I'm self taught. I'm not great, but I'm
Okay.
enough to be able to lead worship in church and have some fun with it and just
Do you
fun things.
actually play at church?
I do. I play every week with the praise band at church,
Hmm.
and have written quite a few songs as well. So yeah,
Oh, cool. Have you
yeah.
any been on Substack?
Yeah, actually, one of the subcategories on my Substack is behind the music, and it's been a few of the like the stories behind the songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just shared the new one in the notes. I didn't put a post up about it, but the new one I was talking about earlier, about passing Jesus on the road, I just put that one up on the notes.
Okay.
So yeah.
So if you can give, I don't know, advice, lesson learned, or reflection for others, what would you want to say?
Um, just right. Just put it out there. Um, release the outcomes. Um, that one of the biggest barriers in my whole life has been trying to have everything figured out before I started something. And there are so many things I never started because of it.
Yeah.
And so to take the risk to get on Substack, and even those first several months to start writing, and there's all those articles that you get about yelling at the void, and letters to the Substack gods, or whatever, you get flooded with all those notes when you first get on here. And I felt every bit of it. I connected with every bit of it, but it was finally where I just said, you know what, I started to notice the patterns. I started to notice that half of this stuff is probably coming from bots. And then I started to look for the human connections, and that made all the difference. That started filtering. That's how I connected with Joe and with you and with a bunch of other people, and realizing that, man, there is so much just depth of humanity out there that is longing for the same thing, and ultimately it comes down to the connection and belonging, and that our stories matter, and that something that we can build something that'll last beyond us. And that's never going to happen
Yeah.
if we keep it to ourselves. I put a note up the other day: 100% of the words we don't write will never be read.
Ooh,
So
that's a good one. I like that one. Well, there's 35 million people that show up on this platform, so there's got to be a reason.
yeah,
There's definitely a reason. I have a lot of subscribers who don't post, but they
right.
comment or they'll support you. They're just great supporters. They're just they just looking for that connection, and they love those pieces. Like, well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. It was wow. There was a lot of directions I didn't expect.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty reflective of my whole Substack. So there you go. It goes all over the place.
So is mine. Like, just inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I've been trying to keep up my restack Saturdays, so Saturday restacks. That's hopefully come out again this Saturday. And if you have a piece at the end of the week, please put it. You see my note. I'll try to post it the night before so we can catch up, and I'll restack you and get you going. So that's the idea. And the other thing, the reason why I do this is because it helps us as a community to grow together. That's really what the intention behind that. Also, look out for Remy Wednesday, and Thomas will be out on Friday, and he'll be my next guest on Monday. I'm John Ronaldo, the Positive Pen, and you're watching Stories, Soul Work, and Substack. Craig, thank you very much. And where can they get your book? Just
right now it's on Amazon, and I just put it on a 99-cent special on Kindle for the next month. So if you want it there, but yeah,
I'll post that in the post article, and you'll have access to that. And in the meantime, thank you.
Thank you so much.